Let's welcome up Ray this morning again.
Yeah, we'll use this. But can someone? Thanks for the opportunity to share again. I like the mornings, but I'm old, so that's, I go to bed like at 7 o'clock at night usually, so. My granddaughter says, she says the other day, "You're like the oldest person in the world." She said that to encourage me, so. So I grew up out in the country. My mom left the reserve when she was like 18 years old. She didn't want to grow up there because there was maybe not every community's like that, but ours was quite dysfunctional, so she left. She didn't want to raise her boys there. And she went and she met a guy, and they had children, 5 of us, and we lived out we rented an old farmhouse, that no one else would rent, but we rented it, and I liked growing up there. It wasn't our land, but we got to live, and my dad taught us how to trap and hunt and fish and those things. But when we were like, I think I was 14 years old, and we bought an old house. My mom made my dad buy this house because she said, "We're never going to have nothing if you keep living like this." So we bought this house, and because my mom's part Mohawk, and Mohawk women, you don't mess around with Mohawk women. That's what I know. And so she said, "We're buying this house." So we bought this house in this little community, just a little wee village. It's like 400 people live there. And so we were older then. I was 14. And so we were helping my dad. We had to add on because we bought this little 1-bedroom place, and we were adding on to it. And so we were working on it. We'd go there after school and drive, and we'd work on it. Somewhere around Halloween, we were putting the furnace in because it was getting cold up there, because where I live, in the winter, it's not uncommon to get minus 40 degrees. And so then we were building this house, and we were putting the furnace in, I remember. And my brother came, and it was Halloween, because it was also good to be there because people like to do tricks at Halloween. And he said to me, my younger brother came in, and he said to me, he said, "Ray," he said, "there's some girls outside. They want to look at you." So I went outside, and there was Elaine and her friends were there. And I went out there, and I remember because I was 14 years old, and I looked at that girl, and the Creator said, "That's the girl you're going to marry." And I was scared to death. And so I ran away for 4 years. So then when I was 18, we started going out. And actually the way it goes is, because it's a small town, you got to picture it. You guys don't know what small town, like, 400 people. So for fun, you drive around. This is what you do. People don't do that anymore, do they? Just drive around. Cruising around.
Describe what you do.
Oh yeah, it was in a van. See, now you said, okay. And it had shag carpet on the walls and the roof. And it had these little balls hanging from the... And we're driving around, a bunch of us, and we see Elaine and this friend of hers, and so we say, we're going to high school together, so we said, "Do you want to, drive around?" And they said, "Okay." So her friend gets in and sits down, and then I'm sitting here, and the driver's over here, and Elaine's standing here, just like this. Only I was sitting down on a chair, and she said, "There's no place to sit." And I said, "You can sit right here." And I pulled her, and she sat on my knee. And she said, "Okay." And we went through some hard things together, and we've been together all these years. So, my privilege, because we do this learning to speak from the heart, and you have hard things you have to talk about. My daughter phoned me a while back because she was going through hard times. She said, "Dad, it's hard." And I said, "Well, it's too hard to do alone." That's the thing the world says to you. They always say, "No, you can tough it out." Well, you can't. It's too hard. And my wife has helped me to speak from the heart. And she's just gonna, I just said, you say what you think you need to say, and then we'll do this together, because we've always done it together. So this is my wife, Elaine.
Thank you. Just a little correction. Most of it was true, but I really feel that Ray and his people have taught me how to speak from the heart. And before I begin, I want to honor Ray for what he spoke about yesterday. You shared some very vulnerable and sometimes painful parts of your story. And I just want to thank you for sharing that so bravely yesterday. And the thing that I was impacted with, and this was new for me, you've now heard the story how he ran away, but I understood yesterday a little deeper what that really meant to you, and the history and the threads in your story that connected that about running away from girls. And I'm just so grateful that when the opportunity came for you to go and try and find your auntie, and I know that you struggled with that, and that you were scared and uncomfortable, but you leaned in and we found her, and you went to her, and I just have this picture of her opening her arms to you and you going into them. And I want to say thank you for not running away, that your auntie really did love you, and you weren't able to feel that, but you finally did. And I know from the conversation that you shared with me and just the comments that her kids said after, that it really meant a lot to her and her kids. And I'm just grateful that you continue to do the hard work of healing in this journey together. So I just want to honor you for that.
Thanks.
And see, we've been talking about emotions and story. And part of my story is I'm from an Irish and Scottish background. My family didn't really know how to show emotion, and they didn't know how to show feelings. I can't remember ever hearing the words "I love you" or hug or whatever. And I'm the middle child, like Ray said, in a northern Alberta community, Wembley. And it took me a long time to learn that all that stuff that we go through in our lives, I've had a few really difficult ones, but that stuff of life impacts all the areas of your being. Like, it affects our mental, our emotional, our physical, and our spiritual. And as we grew through our journey and got some help through doctors, through counseling, through other wounded healers, and from Jesus, we have been able to look at things in a different way. And instead of running away, like it's so easy to do, and I did the very same thing, I was able to sit and be in the mess and be able to put to words ways that I didn't know how to do. I had to have a list of feeling words because I could not explain what was going on inside of me. That is how stuck I was. And through this training, we've just been able to learn new things so that we can have our stories spoken out. And it's just an honor for Ray and I to be able to go through that journey together. Because some of this stuff happened with us and with our kids and with our friends and in the work that was so good that we were constantly doing, but it caused a lot of pain in our lives. We went through many years just kind of, the only way I can describe it is like a mask. We would go into some place and we would appear very normal, very controlled, very happy. But as I learned to express what was really going on inside of me, these are the words that I came up with. I was dying inside. I was hurting. I had a lot of stuff that I didn't want to look at and didn't want to talk about, and I just kept pushing them down. And I went from a family history of depression that I found out and acknowledged finally, but I switched from being very angry to very depressed, different things like that. I wanted relationship, but I pushed those that were really close to me away. Those are just a few of the examples, but it especially affects the ones that are closest to you, your spouse, your kids, your friends. And this kind of helped me, instead of just kind of over the top reacting all the time, is to kind of look, why am I feeling this way? What are the longings I have inside? What are the lies that I believe about myself? Ray had a small list yesterday of them. I had to look at them and examine myself and say, what's going on inside? What's really going on? If somebody was here right now, what would I be able to tell them what was going on inside of me? Who is the real Elaine? And I just found a lot more freedom to be able to share those stories. And not only share those stories, but then also be willing to sit and listen and be with other people as they shared their story. And I didn't feel, one of the little stories of mine is I didn't feel that I had any spiritual background. My immediate family didn't go to church at all. There was a few aunties and uncles, or aunties usually, not my uncles, would go to church, but no one else. So I didn't feel I had any connection spiritually. So that there was a void in that. And at the same time, I knew I was searching. And as we began our journey of faith, things didn't just fall off. Everything wasn't just rosy. We still had some of the big problems that we were dealing with before. And we went over to my homeland, Ireland, and we visited with my relatives. And I've heard Ray say this very often. He said, these are my people. This is my land, a connection to the land. Even in Toronto, the concrete jungle, he felt a disconnect of that connection with the land. So he would go anywhere where there was green, a little park or whatever, and he had a connection there. And I felt that over there. And I was able to look at Ray and say, I understand now what you're saying about my people. And I guess I just really desired that I would continue to walk with Ray on this journey of discovering who he was as a Native person, who I was as an Irish-Scottish woman, and that we could walk together in a better way. And Ray is going to share now some of that journey of where it's taken us. In just a minute. One of the things that I realized as I got some more of the healing is some of the lies that kind of went off of me. I was able to hear Creator speak to me, and it really affected the way I seen who I was. And it's this: I had heard Jesus say to me, "Elaine, I love you. You are valuable to me. I have created you for a purpose, and I will be there every step of the way." So that kind of gives me the courage to walk alongside of other people, but also to walk that journey myself and with Ray.
Thanks. Thank you, Elaine. I was thinking about ceremonies too, the ceremonies that we do. When we pray with smoke, we face the directions. You face the east and you remember the good things that come. And then you face the south and you remember the healing that comes from the south, because where I grew up, when the wind comes from the south, it's warm, and you remember that it brings healing. And when you face the west, you remember your ancestors. And when you face the north, you remember the hard things that come, because when the north wind comes, it always wants to take over this time of year. And then you remember, you look up and you remember the Creator, and you look down and you remember our Mother, the Earth. And it's to remind us that we're connected to all things. That's what, anytime, all the ceremonies, you remember, you take in the whole universe, and you remember all those things. And when they do ceremony in the church, it's the same thing. You remember that you're connected to all things, and all of those relationships are sacred. And you are in the center. You are in the center of that sacred circle, that you are there. And that's the perspective that you have. And that's to remind us that we only have that perspective, but it is the perspective we have. And this should make us humble. And this is why we need other people, and we need the two-leggeds and the four-leggeds and the no-leggeds to help us to see what it's like, because we can only see from our eyes, but we need others to help us. And when we're working through hard things in our heart, we need others to help mirror back to say, what do we see? What do we see? And what do we hear? Because sometimes we engage in negative talk, we call ourselves down. And we need someone to say, you know that's not true, don't you? You know that's not true. And we speak the truth to one another. And Elaine talks about that, how we learn to talk to one another from the heart. And when I think about ceremony, I think about some people call it the Eucharist, and some people call it the communion table. But the idea is that when you take those elements, the bread, the first thing that happens is they take that bread and they take it and they bless it. And that's our lives. That's us. That you take that, whatever it is, and it's taken, it's chosen. Jesus said that in John 15, he said, "You didn't choose me, I chose you." And that's the Creator. He created us. We didn't create ourselves, but He created us. He chose us. And He made us who we are. That's why the first step to become a child of God is really to embrace that you are the beloved, that you are created. But we believe these lies about ourselves. And maybe I always think maybe the next generation, they're going to do it better than we did, because we made lots of mistakes. Because we believed these hard things that happened to us. We believed the lies. And I talked about them last night. You are not good You are not competent. You don't belong. You are unlovable, and you shouldn't exist. And I believed those lies about myself. And I tried to pretend to be somebody else. And I tried to do all kinds of things. I tried to be tough so that everybody would know I was a man. And I tried to not hurt. I made those vows that every young man makes, that no woman will ever hurt me again like that. And I will not love. And I made those vows. But it was talking with people and understanding what was going on. Big challenges come in our life when we internalize these lies and we get stuck. And we believe that we're unlovable. And that happened for me. I was in a place that I was with friends and we just talked about one another. And he'd say, well, why do you say that? Because I was always saying, the question that I'd always ask is, what should I do? What should I do? And I thought if I just did the right things, then people would be happy with me. I remember thinking if I just did the right things, then my mom would be happy with me. Or if I just did the right things, then my dad would be happy with me. And it just carried on to my life. And I thought when I became a minister, if I just did enough good things, then God would be happy with me. If I just prayed enough, if I just did enough ceremonies, if I just was religious enough, or if I was just traditional enough, and if I could just do this, then maybe the Creator would love me. And I would just think about that. But elders, older people, and others would say, why do you talk like that? I said, what do you mean? He says, why do you always say, what must I do? He said, why don't you ever say, who am I? What should I, who am I? And so I'd run away. And I couldn't hear those words that you are. I chose you. You didn't choose me. You are the beloved. You're taken and you're blessed. And I couldn't hear those words for a long time, until I sat in a place with a friend of mine, and we just talked, and he would just, and I had a vision one time. I was thinking how if I could just, I remember I would pray, and I thought if I could just pray enough, then the church where I was ministering would grow, because it was just a little struggling church, just some old ladies and a few little kids and my family, and I thought if I could just pray enough. So I'm there praying, but I would start to fall asleep. Oh, that never happens to you, but it happens to me, and I'd start to, but then I'd find myself and I'd be praying this prayer. And I'd say, why can I see what's wrong with everybody else, but I can't see what's in my own life? How come? What is it? So I had this vision. I remembered when I was 8 years old, my dad said to me, hand me a 3/4 inch wrench. And I said, what's a 3/4? And he said, what's wrong with your head? Dummy up, dummy. And I remember I made this vow, you will never hurt me again. I will always know what to do. And I remembered that. And I was older then. And I remembered that vow, and I had this vision, and I just felt all that pain again, all the pain of those things that happened. And my dad, but I was older then, and I said, and then I just stopped. I started to cry, and then I just stopped. I just stopped it. And my friend, and this is the strength of having someone there with you, you start to visit those things, and then in groups with Elaine and with others, they would say to me, why did you stop? And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, he said, you start to feel something, and you start to talk about something and how it affected you, and then you just stop. Why did you do that? And I said, well, it kind of hurts too much. I didn't say that. I said, well, we were going to drive across the bridge because I was driving when we were talking, and I didn't want to drive into the river. And he said, come on, smarten up. He didn't say smart enough. But then Creator took me back there, and I could see it in my head, this thing happening. And I said to my dad, you had no right to say that to me. I was 8 years old. You know, but he's speaking out of his own pain. He's speaking out of his own pain. And he probably had people who did that to him, and I did it, and he did it to me. And I said, you had no right to do that, but I'm feeling all this pain. And my friend said to me, I said, I don't know what to do. I just feel all this pain. I feel like a victim again. I just feel like I'm abused and no one understands me, and I just feel like this pain. What do I do? And he said, there's something worse than your pain. And I said, really, what is it? And he says, it's your sin. And I said, you jerk. What kind of guy tells a guy who's feeling like a victim that it's his sin? Like, that's kind of, so we always said, people are always saying that to us, you're sinner. But I listened to him, and he said, you believe you're unlovable. You believe you're unlovable. And I said, it's true. I said, I was a minister for 5 years. I was 35 years old. And I believed that God's love was too small for me. That he could never love me because I'm too bad. I've done too many bad things. He couldn't love me. I have to earn his love. I have to suffer for my things that I have done wrong, and I deserve to suffer. That's noble. But it wasn't noble. It was a lie. And my whole life, all those things came together for me. I had run away from love, and I was running away from God's love, and I could not embrace it. And I said, I don't know what to do. So I prayed. And I said, God, help me to turn to you. I just don't know how to do it. And I began to cry. And I said, I receive your love. And for the first time in my life, I could say that Jesus likes me and he loves me. He loves me and he likes me. And I received his love. And it changed my whole life. And the only way that I could go through it was to embrace the pain that was in my heart and find that Christ was there in the middle of the pain. He was not the pain. And the things that happened never should have happened. It's not saying that those things were right, that my parents did or other people's did. They're not. And we should do everything that we can to make sure they don't happen to anybody else. And we should speak out about those things and make sure that they don't happen. But the really tragedy is, like I said yesterday, that we believe them about ourselves. And we believe that we have to earn the Creator's love. And that's what Jesus said. You didn't choose me. I chose you. And the second step, when you take that meal, they break that bread. Right? Jesus said, he said, this is my body that is broken for you. Because the second step to becoming a true human being in this life, I think, is to be broken. But it doesn't mean you have to pray to be broken. That will happen. Stuff happens. But through learning to embrace the hard things, the feelings that come, to embrace our brokenness, we realize that we are becoming wounded healers. That it's actually, because I think a lot of us fear that life will not come out of us. You know, that other people will do great things, but not us. That life won't come out of us. But the truth is it's through our wounds. It's not like they were supposed to be there. But that somehow, because of the grace of the Creator, of Christ, that life comes out of our woundedness. And this is what our experience of this program was. And it was really about just embracing and having someone there, like Elaine and others, to just say that, do you know that Jesus loves you and he likes you? And when we tell the lies, to just have someone say there, you know that's not true. that you are created and you are special, and to hear it again and again. And we begin to believe it, that you are taken and blessed. And yes, we are broken. And then we are given. And we're given for our people. We understand this. The Cree understand this. I'm sure your tradition understand this too, that we suffer. And if we do it in a good way, we suffer ourselves for our people. And we're broken and we're given for the world. That this is what it is to be a true human being. I'm broken. I've come through some painful failures. In fact, that's the only thing I'm really good at, is failing. This is one of these, how am we doing for time, by the way? I always wonder about that. Good? The Navajo guy gave me the thumbs up, so that's good. And so I learned some things, because, you know, part of the whole thing, and you know about university, I don't know, part of my vow was I really wanted to be able to, I wanted to know everything, like, to be able to give answers to everything. So I worked in the forest industry for a lot of years, but then I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree, and then I got a master's degree, and then I was trying to get a PhD. And I did everything I was supposed to do. But when I got to England, I failed. My first failing was in 2010. I went there and I failed. They said it's not good enough. Creator must have thought I need to learn some more, so I came back in a year and I failed again. This PhD was the gift that just keeps on giving. Because even then they wouldn't make a hard decision. I had friends that walked through me. Terry LeBlanc went with me, and then, you know, they couldn't make a decision. I failed, but they held over the failure, and they waited another 6 months, and then they sent me a letter, yeah, you failed. So I failed like 3 times, so that thing really, so, you know, we're broken. We're broken. I got really good at it. So if you want to know how to fail successfully, I'm your guy. But I went through this I went through depression. I woke up every morning for 6 months and I was sad. And I never had that before. My wife has struggled with depression. She sensed that. And it was good that I went through it, because then I understood. I woke up every morning. So I went to the doctor and they said, well, it's not depression. I know it feels like depression, but it's not depression. It's just because you know what's causing it. And I go, well, that's helpful. And so it's not depression, it just feels like depression. Okay, well, okay. But I began to just work through those feelings. I began to understand that the feelings that I was feeling, those strong emotions that you feel when you fail, that they were not the problem. They were the gift. To be able to feel is a gift. And that our feelings are not trying to hurt us. They're trying to heal us. If we can understand them and interpret them correctly. And I understood that thinking about Jesus and having people to embrace me in the midst of my pain and be willing to hold me in the pain and just echo back the truth and not let me go to believe these lies about myself, but to say, that's not how you are. We're broken. So often people try to do all kinds of things and they will not embrace their suffering. They run here and there doing all kinds of things. That's fearful activism. They do all kinds of things because they're afraid of being broke, of being hungry. They can never just be. This is why people have a hard time celebrating and cannot enter into ceremony too, because they're afraid. They have to have some purpose, some goal, some big task they are doing. They can never just be who the Creator made them to be. So in Canada, they made war on our identity, and many of us even tried to reject our own identity. I talked that. And for me, it was just to embrace who Christ made me to be. He made me a Cree man. That's who He made me to be. And part of my healing was to embrace my brokenness And in doing that, to embrace who Christ made me to be. And in doing that, I realized that I had done damage in my life to my children. Not in the same ways that happened to me, but in other ways. I did stupid things. None of them were like criminal, but they were dumb. And part of my healing was to begin to work towards repairing some of that. To dream, you see, and that's when I thought about repentance. The third step of discipleship is to be giving to the world, to be blessed, to be broken, and we're given. Because when you realize that the Creator loves you, that you are a gift, and your story is a gift, and you begin to try to heal the relationships that God has put you into. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was martyred for his faith in Germany, for being a Christian, for speaking out again about Hitler, he said, once we don't have to prove our innocence anymore, we're free to take responsibility for the sins of society and try to heal those things. Because I'm no longer doing it because I'm trying to earn something. I'm just responding to the grace the Creator gave to me. We're given for the world. And one day, I will die. When we pray with smoke and we face all the directions, for me, when we face the West, because in our tradition we believe that our ancestors, when you die, you go to be in the West. And I remember, and I say, I thank you one day that I will go to be with my ancestors and with you. And it will be the biggest gift that I ever give to my family. I want to be able to live in a way that I could live the way that Jesus said, it is good that I go away. For if I go away, it will bear much fruit. I want to live in a way that when I come to the end of my days and I pass on, and they sing songs and they remember me and they give away all my things to my relatives and my friends, that it'll bear much fruit. And my grandchildren remember who I was. And my children will take my place. They will begin to do the things that I did, and they will do them better than me. But it all happens because I embrace who I am. And I'm a broken man. The only things I have to wear are my scars and those things. And many of them shouldn't have happened. I understand that. But I can say that God, that He is somehow life flows out of me. And it's because of these gifts that He has given us to be able to feel, to be able to know that we are taken, we are blessed, and we are broken, and we are given. And that is a gift that we have. And our stories is a gift. And when we tell the hard stories, you see, it's so hard to change, and other people have such a hard time to change. I have a hard time changing. But when I hear my wife's story, when she tells me her story, when she tells me how I made her feel when I was acting out of my pain, and if I will just listen to what she says, and if I will feel what I caused, the pain that I caused, that will give me the energy and the to change. If I do not feel, I can't change. That's one thing the Pentecostal preachers have right. If you don't feel something, you won't do anything. Our feelings are a gift. But we need help because they're strong and they're powerful. And we need help to interpret those things. We would just like to say a little prayer, if that's okay, for all y'all.
Creator, we come here just the way we are. And we are so grateful that you are the one that knows everything about us, right down into the depths of our being. You have chosen us. You have loved us. And as Ray has said, you even like us. Thank you for that. And I pray for each person in this room and the ones that couldn't be here but wanted to be. I pray that you would give each person the strength to open their hearts, to hear your words of love, and that you are fond of them, that you cherish them, that you will sit in the mess with them, that you will provide people and people that are trained, people that are friends. You will provide your Holy Spirit to speak into their lives. Thank you that you have walked with Ray and I in this journey, and that we will continue just as your son did. So we trust you. We surrender to you.
And I thank you, Creator, that long before that you put me in my ancestors, and that they prayed for me for 7 generations, and I existed in their minds and in the treaties, and that you established long before I was born. And when I die, I will not cease to exist, but I will be to be with you and the venerated ancestors. I thank you. And I thank you that one day when I die, I will give my greatest gift to my grandchildren, a life that was lived for you. Help me and help us. Help us to dream. Give us a vision. What would it be like if we loved with our whole hearts, with everything that we are? And help us. For you are big and we are small. And we need one another. Help us, guide us today. Help us to make those connections that we need to make. Help us to see as you see. Help us to be in the center of that sacred circle, to understand. And I thank you for what you're doing. I hope.
Oh, thank you, Ray and Elaine, for that. I could honestly just sit here, listen to them all day, share stories. I might fall asleep once or twice, but I'm going to be glad you're still talking when I wake up.